many millions of years, until about 20 million years. But this one was the first one that we found of that genus, or that place. So it was like the fossil. So Steve gave me the fossil. So he passed it to me, and then I dropped it like so close, put it in my pocket here, close to my heart. And then I got too excited, I said, I want to see it again. And then I pull it out, and then the wind, it fell off from my hand. We spent hours that day and didn't find it, got lost. So we went back to the camp, and I was so sad that night, and then it's like, what are we gonna do? So then we thought, well, what if we get a sieve, and we just sieve the material back in the quarry. And of course there were no sieves anywhere in town. So we ended up purchasing pasta drainers. You know, it's the same concept. You have little holes. And so we ended up with a few of those in the quarry, and it spent probably the first 2 hours of the day. And then we were, well, this is the last one that we're gonna do. And just maybe we'll find another one. And we did it, and it was right in the middle.
My guest today is Dr. Fabiany Herrera, Associate Curator of Paleobotany here at the Field Museum of Natural History. Fabiany,
yeah, thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. So let's jump right in. What can fossils tell us about the origin of neotropical forests?
That's a big question, but it's one that I've been trying to answer for almost 20 years, since I was an undergraduate student back in Colombia. And I guess it depends on the type of fossils you're looking at. In my case, which is fossil plants, they tell us pretty much everything you want to know about the rainforests, or the tropical forests, I should say. They can tell us about climate, past climate, for example. They can tell us about plant diversity, plant composition. We can figure out how the forest has changed or evolved in terms of the families that we see today, for example. They can tell us about past extinctions. It can tell us about plant-insect interactions, for example, looking at traces that herbivore insects left on fossil leaves or fossil wood. They can tell us about dispersal events. They can tell us about fungi that attack the leaves of the plants, for example. And I could go for hours probably trying to tell you more. But
well, so they can. How are we able to discern when climate change is happening from the fossil record then?
Yeah, so plants, as you probably know, they respond to the environment, basically, to light, to the amount of water or humidity, sometimes nutrients as well, of course, and all the other interactions that they have with the environment, including pollinators and herbivores and things like that. But anatomically speaking, a plant will respond to those, to climate, for example, to the amount of light, to the amount of the altitude, the amount of CO2 as well. So we can use all those anatomical or morphological characters that can be preserved in a fossil to interpret past climates. Of course, we have to assume, for example, that the plants will respond to the same way that we see today to infer that. So there is a little bit of a challenge, particularly when it comes to fossils that are very, very ancient. Then to assume that everything is the same as today, it gets a little bit more complicated. But for plants that are about, let's say, 60, 50, 40 million years old, it's probably okay to assume those the same response that we see today.
Can you talk a little bit about what the forest was like during the age of the dinosaurs, and after the meteorite hits, and then post-meteorite?
You know, that's a great question, Paul, because that's probably the thing that I'm more interested in these days. And just to make a little announcement, We're about to open an exhibit here at the museum later this month. It's called After the Age of Dinosaurs. And it basically, the main topic that we wanted to bring into this new exhibit is how life changed after the extinction. But of course, we have to talk a little bit about how things were before the extinction. And in terms of the forest, it dramatically changed. It's like two different worlds, right before and after the extinction. I have a student here, his name is Hector Palma, and he and I, we've been collecting a lot of Cretaceous fossils in northern South America, mostly Colombia and Ecuador as well. And to put it to give you a short answer, let's just say before the extinction, and let's say early Cretaceous, about 130, 40 million years ago, the type of forest that existed in the neotropics, particularly in northern South America, I don't think we don't really have a forest like that. There is no analog. Mm-hmm. But it will be a forest that will be composed of mostly gymnosperms were the dominant components, conifers, likely very just giant trees that were, topping the canopy, and then a mixture of ferns, cycads, ginkgos in the tropics. First of all, that's like, what, a ginkgo? And other plants that are extinct, and ferns, of course, as well. But in some point, as particularly at that time, early Cretaceous, the angiosperms arrived as well. So then you had a few more millions, 10, 20 more millions. So then you had a forest that is completely unique. And to be honest, I cannot really comprehend what kind of forest that was, because it's hard to compare it with something today. So you have all the major groups of plants that produce a seed. We call it seed plants, all coexistent, diversifying, and dominating the forest at the same time. So it really is fascinating when you think about that. We have found, for example, there is this place in Colombia, it's called La Paja Formation. That's the major topic of my students' thesis. And we found conifer cones the size almost of a pineapple. The monkey puzzle family, Araucariaceae, was the queen of the forest at that time, which is like, how is that possible? It's like, you don't think of conifers being the dominant group in the tropics. So it really is a fascinating topic right now. We have poorly explored it in that part of the world, which makes it a little more exciting.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how the extinction of dinosaurs spread grapes to the rest of the world?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because we got this paper that it took a lot of years to get it published, to convince reviewers that this was relevant, but also to find the fossils. So, then we had this forest that we had no analog for, and then we get this impact, this extinction. And then and that's how I started my career in paleobotany, actually, was looking at fossils that were 60 million years old, so right after the extinction. And when I started collecting the plants, it just looks like a rainforest that you will see today. Palms, legumes, bananas, and grapes, for example. A few things that look like grapes. And it's just like a rainforest. But then we realized very quickly that in terms of diversity, it was very low, very little diversity. So, and grapes was one of those families. But then what we realized is that also the type of forest was different before and after the extinction. So we realized that something was going on early in the Paleocene, 60 million years ago. So we collected other fossils before the extinction, right before, and no legumes, no grapes, no passion fruits, no many spermaceae, for example. And these three last families that I mentioned to you are those that tend to grow as lianas, They will grow up to the top of the trees, grow on top of the other trees. So you only see those families right after the extinction in northern South America. So then grapes, for this particular case, then after the extinction, we started finding them in pretty much every locality that I collected in the neotropics, in Panama, in Peru, on different ages, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20 million years. Then it's just, they're everywhere. Mm-hmm. So one thing that I learned is that the extinction must have changed the structure of the forest. And the only way to explain it is by, by closing the forest. So, for example, if you close the forest, then the plants are going to compete for light, and that's something that we see today. As you close the canopy, then all the plants are going to need to grow in a different way to reach the light. And we see that in the fossil record. It truly is amazing. If I collect anything that is pre-extinction, you don't see those families. So I don't know if it's just, I don't know how to recognize plants that were growing as lianas or vines, which is possible, or maybe there were other families, but we don't see any of those. And then right after the extinction, they appear. So grapes and all these other viney plants really show that it's very likely that the forest closed. And why they close? So before the extinction, if you have dinosaurs, what we hypothesize, we still need a lot of data to fully test this hypothesis. If you had these giant dinosaurs roaming through the forest, they were probably opening the forest, knocking down trees constantly, keeping it open. And whereas, well, they are gone, that pressure is gone, and the forest closed, and then the structure of the forest changes. Mm-hmm. So, but it's one of those things that we still need more data to fully understand it. But based on the fossil evidence, it looks like a likely chance, a mm-hmm. high possibility.
Another discovery from out of Colombia. Could you talk a little bit about this turtwig?
Yes, that's so funny, And let me say something here. I don't know anything about Pokemon, but students they are pretty good at those things. So they were the ones that came out with that name. So that fossil put us back to the Cretaceous, the same early Cretaceous Florida. So that fossil, I'm not an expert on turtles, of course, mm-hmm. although I have had a lot of experience collecting them because sometimes they co-occur with the plants. But this one was very interesting. It's a kind of funny story. The only paleobotanist we had in Colombia for decades, from like the 1950 to early 80s, that was like the career, was a priest that collected fossils and tried to identify them. There was no one else doing paleobotany as a proper Colombian. There were some foreign people that came in, collected a few things, but although he was good at collecting things, he was not that good at identifying them, unfortunately. I think because he didn't have a lot of connections, and mm-hmm. You need that kind of feedback. Yeah. And so he collected this plant-looking thing from a concretion, and that was formed in a shallow marine environment. And he described it as a sphenophyllum. And for those that know paleobotany, sphenophyllum is a plant that you will associate in the Carboniferous. It's very common in Euro-America 300 million years ago, way back, too old. Yeah. Basically the same age of the Mason Creek fossils that you probably heard here from Illinois. Mm-hmm. So he described it as a sphenophyllum, and it stayed like that for decades. He didn't photograph it. He made a drawing in the book that he published and called it Sphenophyllum colombiano. So with my student, one of the goals is just to revisit all this material and look at it with a different view, using CT scanning, a lot of new techniques which are fundamental for doing paleobotany these days. So as soon as I saw the fossil, it took me several years to get the permit. I just knew immediately, this is not a leaf. It just looked weird. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know what it was either. So that's when you need friends in paleontology. I emailed my one of my best friends and colleagues. and his study is turtles, and he immediately responded, "That's a baby turtle." Then it went from a leaf to a turtle. That's where the students that got a lot of imagination. They knew that there was a Pokemon that is half a turtle, half a leaf. So that's how it was named Turtwig. But the important thing of this is that we still need to revisit all these fossils to really understand what they are, and also understand the flora that occurs in that same locality, which is these early conifers that lived in the tropics 130 something million years ago.
Did that priest collect those from that strip mine or the mine?
So there? These are mostly just outcrops. Just there are no mines in this place. It's kind of like a little high altitude dry area, so you get a lot of exposure, which is rare in Colombia.
Yeah.
But it was it's almost like 2,700 meters in altitude, this area. And you can actually walk for a long time, and then you find these egg-shaped rocks that you crack with a hammer, and it's almost like Mason Creek a little bit, but and that's how he collected. But a bunch of material actually comes from people that just found it in their yards and their farms, and they bring it to small museums, small collections, and we're trying to revisit all that material because it hasn't really been studied systematically. So it takes decades and decades sometimes to do that kind of work. So we're just really started in this new wave of paleobotany in that sense.
Yeah, because there's not many fossil field sites in South and Central America, right?
Actually, I think it's the opposite.
Oh, there's more now?
Yeah, there is a lot of sites, a lot of places. So two things. One thing that the way that I approach this, my career, my exploration in Northern South America and Central America is by looking at all literature. So there was a lot of papers published in the early 1920, 1930 by paleobotanists called Edward Berry. And he described an endless amount of fossils from the neotropics. But he only went once to Peru. But pretty much every fossil was described by him. Yeah. So people will send him the material, geologies, and he will describe it immediately as a ficus, as any living plant that you will see today is in his literature pretty much, which is not the case. Yeah. But so we can revisit those old localities, and I've been lucky that I've been able to find most of the ones that I tried to relocate in Peru, in Panama, in Dominican Republic lately, Colombia, and we find more material than he did because all that he got was just one or two specimens, so we can get actually the whole flora, get a better age of the material, and a better understanding of the composition. And the other ways is just exploring complete new areas. But it's just, there are fossils everywhere. It truly is amazing. And sometimes it's just an accident or a once in a lifetime opportunity. For example, when I was a PhD student, I was an intern at the Smithsonian in Panama, and at that time was the expansion of the Panama Canal, which it's only happened twice. When they built the canal more than 100 years ago, and back in 2006. And that time, it's just the amount of fossils that we have found is just incredible. And I mean, that was the chances to get another expansion. I don't know, maybe never, maybe in 100 years. But that moment was incredible. We found all kinds of fossils, and plants particularly, flowers, fungi, seeds, all kinds of permineralized things that are petrified. So they have excellent preservation. So sometimes it's just luck.
Can you talk about some of your field work that you've done outside Central and South America?
So that's been more of I started doing that kind of work mostly during my postdocs. So a few places that I done fieldwork is Mongolia and China, and the nice thing about these places is that it's also early Cretaceous, so about the same age of the Torwick deposit, and it's just been fascinating, an incredible opportunity, because even though we know a lot of fossils from many parts of that world, especially from China, in terms of they've been doing paleobotany for decades and decades, there are still areas that are completely unexplored. So, and Mongolia, in terms of plants, is totally unexplored. It's you know Mongolia because of the dinosaurs, usually the bones, the eggs, and all that. But they haven't really done much with the plants. So, it was a great place to start collecting new things, and we were lucky that this place in Mongolia, the fossils are about 120 million years old, but they are lignified, meaning it's almost like mummified. Like you see the plants in 3 dimensions, and we get literally hundreds of thousands of specimens, which is not common to get that amount of material. But then it gives you a chance to fully see how the morphology of the plant changes, hypothesize about development and growth, and get a chance to do a lot of analysis as well with them. But this is that one that you see on the wall right there is one of the plants that we were able to reconstruct based on material from Mongolia. Actually, and these two that you see on the wall, I can send you pictures about them. But you see the whole 3-dimensionality right there in this artist reconstruction. This one was a total puzzle to describe, because we found most of the plants that we found are disarticulated. So this was a swamp where plants were growing and dropping thousands of leaves every year. So we found them like that. So we have to. It's like a detective work that you have to use all anatomy and morphology, for example, to put all the pieces together. But I like this one. It's one of my favorite plants ever, because it shows a ginkgo-like plant that doesn't look like ginkgo.
Yeah.
So you only see the long, short shoots, and the leaves don't look like ginkgo, but the anatomy is like ginkgo. And it turned out to be a completely new type of plant when we described it back in 2017.
New to science.
Yes, completely new to science, yeah. Most of this stuff actually was totally new to science, the ones from Mongolia.
Yeah.
And I'm about to go to South Africa next month.
Oh, nice.
So, I'm very lucky that I can get the chance. I get the chance to do this kind of work and look for plants. But even though we've been collecting fossils for a long time, we still get a lot of new
discoveries.
things.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, so what are some of the biggest discoveries in paleobotany over the last decade or so?
That's a great question. Let's see. The origin of the angiosperm is still probably one of the top, topics in my field, and sometimes we see still more evidence that they were truly present during the early Cretaceous, and it started diversifying at that time. So I think that's still one of the major topics. And some of the work that we did with Mongolia was trying to understand where they came from. That's trying to figure out the group where they evolved from. And we don't really know. We think it was a gymnosperm or gymnosperm-related plant. And based on these fossils from Mongolia, we were able to hypothesize that one of the lineages that gave origin to angiosperms likely came from a group of Uncomacielis, or a cupulate type of plants that have a tissue that gave origin to the second integument in angiosperms. So I think that's probably one of the biggest discoveries still. You see other discoveries that try to show evidence of a pre-Cretaceous angiosperm, but I don't think those fossils really show that. So that's still not good evidence. We need really good fossils to show that. There's I guess one of the major ways or major discoveries in paleobotany have been related with restarting previous material with new techniques like CT scanning and re-evaluating the fossils. There is a lot of material that, for example, from the early land plants that have been done to try to understand how plants evolve and how they develop all the features that we saw back in that time. That would be some of the major discoveries.
What do you think we can learn from these ancient plants that we could apply to current ecosystems today?
Yeah, you know what? That's something that I think about it all the time. And the exhibit that I mentioned to you about after the age of dinosaurs, that was something that we wanted to incorporate in the exhibit without pushing too hard. But it's part of the evolution of our planet, of the life in our planet. So right after the extinction of the dinosaurs, that moment happened in seconds, but it took millions of years for the forest, for example, to recover. Particularly in Colombia and Venezuela, when we look at all the impact of the extinction on plants. It took about 6 million years for the forest to recover from that extinction. It changed in composition and structure in many other ways, but it was a period of 6 million years where plants were just low in diversity. Herbivore insects were also had very little diversity. So the impact that a major extinction can have on an ecosystem, it truly is, think about that, 6 million years of recovery.
Yeah.
The forest didn't disappear and life, was able to recover, but that is an incredible amount of time that takes for an ecosystem to recover. So now if we apply that, to what's happening today, for example, that's a pretty serious implication.
Yeah.
And particularly when you take into account that 66 million years ago there was no deforestation, there were no humans, there were not all these other things that are happening right now. So what's going to happen in the future? So fossils can really tell us about what's going to happen.
Why do we find the highest diversity, plant and tree diversity in the neotropics?
Today, right? Yeah,
Today,
that would be today. That's also a great question, and I think it has to do with a lot of accidents in a way. So let's just start at 66 million years when you get this major extinction, and then it's kind of like a reset of the forest, right? And then, and now we know that it took 6 million years to start recovering a lot of time. So about 58 or so million years, the forest we started seeing diversifying. We get more plants. We see that in the pollen record, for example, lots of new species. But after that, the neotropics, for example, had gone through so many other geological accidents that are so fundamental and critical for the evolution of the forest. So geology and biology go next to each other. So it's almost impossible not to think those two things to explain the current diversity. So you get this new type of forest, then you start rising the Andes, then you start changing the currents along the Pacific as the Andes were building. Then you start getting the Amazon River, or like what we think is the Amazon River. Then you close the Panamanian Seaway. Then you get for a long period of time, the ocean going into the Amazon rainforest. When you put all that incredible geological history, all that you see are responsible for that diversity that we see today. Even though we see those events as probably negative for the forest, ultimately have incremented the diversity and produced ways for plants to diversify to produce new ecosystems like the Andes, for example. These high mountains create new opportunities for plants to evolve and diversify. Maybe that ocean that was in the core of the Amazon rainforest separated populations, and then they diversify after thousands of years. So the key point is understanding geology and biology in this case to understand that incredible
the
diversity.
confluence of those events.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They've been like this, it's like twins.
What would you say has been your most exciting fossil discovery over your career? Is there one that stands out?
Actually, I have to say a grape.
The grape? Yeah.
The oldest. Because since I started my career, and then when I started my PhD, my advisor, he is one of the things that he's been studying for a long time, grapes, Steve Manchester at the University of Florida. And every time I would go to the field, I would say, I think I got this grape. He would say, no, that's not a grape. But I kind of wanted to find it in the neotropics because it has to be there somewhere.
Yeah.
But it literally took me 20 years until one day I was with my colleague Monica Carvalho at the University of Michigan, and she was the one who actually found it. I found the locality, but she pulled out the rock and told me there is a grape. So, but technically we both found it.
That was
but I knew immediately that this was going to be a good paper because it really tied all that story that I wanted to say about grapes and how they have moved and when extinct. Also, another thing in the neotropics, just because it appears in the neotropics means that it's going to stay there forever. No, totally the opposite. What now we're seeing with the fossil record is that the chances that you're going to go extinct are also likely as high as as appearing in the neotropics. So it's a living creature, this forest. It changes. It's not static.
Yeah. And did you make that discovery in Colombia then?
Yes. Yeah, that was in Colombia, yeah.
And do you remember the first fossil that you ever found?
The first plant, yes. Yeah, the first. So when I was an undergrad, I knew I wanted to be a paleontologist. But first I jumped to different groups. I grew up in a state called Santander, and my hometown is Bucaramanga. I said it slowly because it's a really long, weird word. But all that area is mostly covered with marine deposits, Cretaceous in age. So I knew about fossils from early on. But the first plant was when I visited a coal mine in Colombia as part of a class that I took, and I got out of the bus and I started collecting plants right away. But I think I still have it somewhere in my office.
The first one.
Yes,
yeah.
but it really changed my life because after that I just knew this is what I want to do, and then that was my project thesis as an undergraduate. It turned out to be the oldest rainforest that looks like a neotropical rainforest in northern South America, 60 million years old. We found the biggest snake that has ever lived in that same deposit by accident, called Titanoboa, and turtles and many other reptiles. So yeah, I think that one is the coolest.
It stands out, yeah. So are there any plant groups that have survived multiple extinction events? And if so, what could those teach us about survival?
Wow. I would say probably ferns. Those are fern allies are the ones that will come to. That would probably be the best answer because they've been since the Paleozoic, Carboniferous, and even before that. So, and they are still around. We see them, thriving despite all those changes in continents and climate and extinctions, and they're still here. So,
do we have any theories as to why they've been so successful?
I guess in a way would be, and I quote this, their simplicity for reproduction might be a way. That would be my guess to to why they have been so have survival this time, but they don't really depend on another entity for reproduction. Basically, you just need water, soil, and that's how they will reproduce. The right conditions to release their spores. But when you have a flower that is intimately related to a bee or a wasp,
Right.
then those connections, those intricate relationships will make them sometimes more susceptible to extinction if one of those disappears. So.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have regarding the field of paleobotany?
That I think it's when people ask me, what is that for? What do you, why should we care about paleobotany or paleontology in general? Even my mom sometimes asks me, what is what you do? So I have two things to say about that. One is that we still need to fund and keep doing paleontology and paleobotany for future generations, and because we can learn so much about the past that help us to learn what's gonna come in the future. But I think it's also then our responsibility as scientists to make the public understand our field and the things that we do. So, and I think a place like the Field Museum is great for showcase that. Like with this new exhibit coming up, it's my first exhibit actually here at the Field Museum as a curator, and the amount of work that goes behind the scene is truly incredible. I probably had 1,000 meetings about every single little thing. But a colleague of mine told me this the other day. Keep doing that because thousands of people are going to see that exhibit and learn about paleobotany, what it means and why we do it. Then you just write it another paper that 5 people are going to read. Right. And it's absolutely true. Yeah. So, I think that doing an exhibit and working for the exhibit and showing the public the importance of the fossils and how much we learn about them, it has more impact in the end, ultimately. And maybe one of those visitors, one of the students or little kids could say, kind of want to be a paleontologist. And actually that happens.
Right.
Can I ask you something? Something that you want to ask me is about Green River, the place that I've been doing now here in Wyoming. And I take students. If you want me to talk about that, I will.
Sure,
and the exhibit has a lot of Green River fossil plants, 52 million years old. Actually, let me show you one real cool here. This one is the oldest yam.
Oldest yam?
Yeah, from that place. And another place that I've been working a lot. Sorry for the selfish advertisement. These are from Mason Creek, which from Illinois, 300 million years old.
But this is Green River, Wyoming.
Yes, yeah. My niece made that reconstruction.
Oh wow.
She's studying art.
Did she do this
yeah,
one
she
too?
did that one too.
Oh wow.
But that's 300 million years.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, and this one is going to be on the exhibit actually.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, do you want to talk about your fieldwork in Wyoming then?
Yeah, so when I started my position here, I really wanted to study this deposit. I did a little bit of work before I became the curator here, but Green River has a great connection with the museum. For more than 20, 30 years, our previous curator of fossil fish, Lance Grandi, he collected thousands of fossils from this deposit. It's located in southwest Wyoming near Commodore, and the place is one of the most spectacular fossil deposits of that age is early Eocene, 52 million years old. It happened during a time of global warming. And basically imagine like that neotropical rainforest that we've been talking about, but in Wyoming. It's sort of a weird type of forest because you don't think of forest, first of all, in that part of North America, but it also has a lot of plants that were likely in the neotropics that were able to, either they appear there or arrive to that area, but then all of them went extinct. So lots of palms, lots of all the grapes and legumes, for example. And one of the coolest plants that we have found from that one is the oldest yam. They are one of the most important families in Africa for producing food for people as a crop. And there has been a lot of hypotheses that it likely originated in Eurasia, for example, maybe in Africa as well, maybe in the neotropics, but not so much. And it turned out that the oldest fossil comes from North America, from Wyoming, of all places. So, and we're still finding lots of. I was just there this summer, and with several people here at the museum, we go every summer now. We take high school students, and we go for 2 weeks. We camp at the quarry, and we spend 2 full weeks of digging and getting lots of fruits and seeds. My previous curator, Lance Grande, he collected a lot of fish. That's what he studied. So plants were collected just as a surplus, as a, oh, this one is kind of nice, well, we can take it. But now we've been collecting more plants than ever, so it's going to be really nice to learn about that forest.
Is there a fossil site that you have yet to visit that's on your list of places that you'd like to go?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yes. There's one in Patagonia that I would love to go in Argentina, and that I have always wanted to go, but I never had the chance to go. It's called Laguna de Lunco, and it's actually the same age as the place in Wyoming, as Green River, 52 million years old. And it's been sort of iconic for understanding the origin of the plant diversity in South America, because it's one of the most diverse fossil plant localities in the world. And when it was discovered 20 plus years ago, Peter Wilf and many other paleobotanists, they reported this incredible flora, and at first they described it as a truly neotropical forest, but I think personally I think it's something more that doesn't exist anymore. Another one of those forests with non-analog today that is a mixture of neotropical, but this one has a lot of taxa from Australia and Asia, because Australia was closer to South America back then. So, yeah. But when you see the photos of the fossils, it's just beautiful. Yeah. And according to my colleagues, the amount of fossils that you get there is just beyond anything. So I really want to go one day. Yeah. that probably is at the top on my list to visit. Yeah.
What advice would you have for a young person that would like to take up the field of paleobotany?
To take for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
I think Green River would be, in Wyoming, would probably a good place here in North America. If I'm talking about a young person in the United States, probably Green River, because one is the facility to access the quarries and to collect. You're gonna find something no matter what. Yeah. A plant or a fish, but you're finding something. Sometimes you go to the quarries or the places and you spend days and you don't find anything. So, yeah. So I think that's kind of like important for someone who's starting to. Well, one, they're really gonna like it or not. But I guess if you don't find anything, it's also a good test because that's part of the job as well. Sometimes it's, you know, we don't find anything. I've been to places like that that is like, God damn, like spent a whole weekend and didn't find much.
Do you have any stories from the field that that particularly stand out?
Let's see. I do, but now I have to think about which one.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Like, oh, actually, this one, I like this one now that I remember. I have many, but now that you asked me this, I can't remember any. But there was one in Peru that is this fossil. So the locality first was described by this guy, Berry, in the 1920 or something like that, in Peru. And he reported the paper, and he visited the locality, actually, the only one that he visited it. And the fruits are about, he's mentioned something like maybe 40 million years old, 50 million years old. They ended up to be only 28 million years old. It's still very important. But the preservation is truly spectacular, three-dimensionally preserved. You can, when we restudy some of this material, the way that we study them was by cutting them with a saw, and then you can look inside. Now we do a CT scan. No, we will not destroy it, but we didn't have the CT scanners. But with my advisor, Steve Manchester, we went just, let's go and see if we can find it again in the locality and collect more material and figure out the age. And we literally just landed in Peru, rented a car, got there, and just started looking like a needle in a haystack. And it took like 3 days, 4 days, almost at the more than half of the trip to find the locality. It was challenging, but we found it, so that was great. And then we started collecting. It's like going to the market. You get the fruits and the seeds. It's just incredible. And we found a fruit of a family that we were able to identify right away in the fields called Icacinaceae. It's a family that doesn't grow in the neotropics anymore, but it used to be very common in that part of the world. We see it in Colombia, 60 million years old. We see it in the Eocene and in many millions of years, until about 20 million years. But this one was the first one that we found of that genus or that place. So it was like the fossil. So Steve gave me the fossil. So he passed it to me, and then I dropped it like so close, put it in my pocket here, close to my heart. And then I got too excited. I said, I want to see it again. And then I pull it out, and then the wind, it fell off from my hand. And I didn't move. I was like, must be somewhere here close. Couldn't find it. I got up, and then the sand and all the materials just disappeared. So I was just, it's like, God damn it, the only one we found. And finally, like an hour after later, I told Steve, I lost the specimen. He was very sweet. He said, oh, we'll find it. And we spent hours that day and didn't find it. It got lost. So we went back to the camp, and I was so sad that night. And then it's like, what are we gonna do? So then we thought, well, what if we get a sieve, and we just sieve the material back in the quarry? And of course, there were no sieves anywhere in town. So we ended up purchasing pasta drainers. It's the same concept. You have little holes. And so we ended up with a few of those in the quarry, and it spent probably the first 2 hours of the day. And then we were, this is the last one that we're going to do. And just maybe we'll find another one. And we did it, and it was right in the middle.
The last one.
And it was the only one we found.
Wow.
And we haven't found any other from that place or any other that genus from any other place in South America. So, and it was finally described in 2012.
Oh, glad you found
But
it. Yeah.
yes, I know it, but it's one of those things that is like, damn.
What do you hope for your own scientific legacy?
You know, I rarely think about that, but I think what I would like to be remembered for, I think, is the collections that I leave. Because I think I mentioned this to you when I started my job here. You know, one thing that I learned is that you die and nothing goes with you. But and you know, papers, you can write good papers, not so good papers, long papers, short papers. Things change over time, you know, and ideas and new fossils come. But I think ultimately specimens and collections, they will always be there for future generations, future scientists, for the public. One day these fossils can become part of the exhibit. So I think building collection is probably ultimately my biggest goal. And that, like, that's one of the things that I love the most of my field, is being able to find new things. I think that's what really makes me excited about this, is, you know, when you go to the field and split the rock and you're the first human being to see that fossil, no one can take that from you.
Right, yeah.
You know, this paper or this publication or this is, yeah, it's great. I mean, we need that, but I think the discovery part is what really is exciting about this field. And I think it's what I really liked and I fell in love with at and you know, from the beginning. But I think that's what I.
What do you think is the most important quality that a scientist or paleobotanist should have?
Perseverance, patience, you know, just being humble. I think that's also important. Curiosity, very important. I think that's probably 50% of it is just being curious about, what if I do this with this fossil, or try this other thing, or I visit this area that no one has ever visited. And also being nice is also important, especially to young people, to students, and you know, because it's hard to be a scientist. It's not like Jurassic Park type of role that, you know, it's all fun and this, and you know, like these days, for example, with all the funding cuts and all this attack on science that we've seen, you know, I think that is crucial, to provide the support to students, you know, to postdocs, that are, you know, this is not an easy time to be a scientist. And I think helping them and providing the support is crucial.
What would be your top 3 book recommendations?
Damn. Now you're gonna kill me with that one. What kind of books are we talking about?
Well, it can be fiction, nonfiction. Up to you. Up to you.
You know, you kill me with that one. You're gonna have to delete that. Let me think about that. Actually, well, let's see. I got this one here that I started reading, but I haven't finished it. Let's see. I'm gonna put them here so we see them.
Curators.
Yeah, that one is good because it's a fiction, non-fiction book about what you just asked me about.
Yeah.
You know, what scientists and what. And this is Lance Grande, the guy here that was the previous curator at Green River. And it's a long book, but it really shows, you know, all his career. But it reflects the career of many, especially here at the Field Museum and many other museums. This one I really recommend it because, first of all, Walter was my professor in botany at the University of Florida of Middle Earth. And it's a really nice book that shows, you know, all how he interpreted the books that were in the Lord of the Rings and all the related books. So that one is pretty good as well.
Interesting.
And the other book that I'm reading right now, the only one that I'm reading right now, that one is called Doctor Sleep. Um, See, now I forgot the name. You called me. No, you kill me with this question.
That's right.
Totally unexpected. What is this guy named that writes lots of horror books? Stephen King.
Stephen King, yeah.
Yeah, it's Doctor Sleep by Stephen King. I'm only like a third of the book, but it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the hardest challenge that you've had to overcome in your life?
Academically speaking, or in life in general?
Either one.
I think probably trying to go to college and grad school and trying to survive, because it was not easy in Colombia to you know to go to university in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it was hard, economically speaking. The language then here in the United States, and as a an immigrant here, then and trying to prove that that you're good at this and that you can make it. I think that's probably been the hardest thing in my life. But I think if you work hard and I'm so grateful to this country because I did my master's and my PhD, and now I'm here, and I want to give back all those opportunities that have been given to me. Nothing has been free. I worked really hard for them, but I think probably that's the biggest challenge.
How has your work studying paleobotany impacted your humanity?
How? Repeat it again. How?
How has your work studying...
My work?
Yeah, studying paleobotany. How has that impacted your humanity?
That's a very philosophical question. I think the way that it has changed me, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is making sure it has given me the chance to give back and to make sure that the things I didn't have, or the opportunities that I didn't get, or the economical support that I didn't have, the financial support that I didn't have when I was in college and grad school, that I make sure that the people that work for me and the students that work with me, that they get that chance. And all the things that that were not easy for me, coming from another country, making sure, I think that has made me realize that my role is now to make sure that people, had those opportunities, and make sure that the next generation of paleobotanists and scientists, learn about those things as well. That they get a chance and an opportunity, and then there's their responsibility to do the same for the next generation. And that's something that, because of the mentoring opportunity that we really have in this field, as a scientist, as we mentor people to become a scientist and to be better on that. But at the same time, we're mentoring them as human beings. And sometimes I've seen older scientists in most cases, that take things for granted, or that they have certain attitudes, the way that they used to do science, like, no, this is my fossil, you don't do that, I don't want you to study it, or I'm gonna make as much difficult as I can your field and your research for whatever reason. I want the people that work with me and the students that work with me to not do that, and be the opposite and provide them chances and opportunities and make things that life is hard enough, you know, to make it more complicated. So I think this job gives you that opportunity to make it good or bad, you know, and that's something that really has positively impacted me by seeing the negative aspects of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Was there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to cover?
No, I think we got it all. Other than just if you guys hear this in the next year or so, come and visit after the age of dinosaurs. That would be. I haven't seen the final product yet. They're still building it, but it opens in 2 weeks. So I'm kind of excited about that too.
It opens in 2 weeks,
yes.
And then how long does it go for?
Until the summer of 26.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of time, but
right.
But you know, time flies.
That's right. Come to the Field Museum and check it out.
Yeah, here at the Field Museum, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, Fabiany, it's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul, for having me, and hopefully I'll make it back another day.
Thank you.